Today's question for you to answer down in the comments is a little bit of a complex one. What is your favorite horror movie by a director who's not known for horror films? They could be like a classy director, an auteur, just someone that is a well-known director, not known for horror movies, that made a horror movie. Francis Ford Coppola doing Dracula, Scorsese doing Cape Fear, stuff like that. Hello, I'm Adam Caesar. This is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new or reissue horror movie and then pair it with a piece of horror reading that you may enjoy if you like that movie. I've got plenty more videos for you on the channel, so please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and go check out my other stuff. Today we're going to be talking about Jim Jarmusch's new theatrical zombie comedy, star-studded zombie comedy, The Dead Don't Die, which has been already fairly divisive among my friends and other horror fans. And then we're going to do a very special announcement, and then we're going to do a very cool book recommendation. This is a little bit different than the books we usually talk about. It's definitely, it's nonfiction, and it's kind of beautifully produced, and we're going to talk about it. So Jim Jarmusch, not known as Blood and Guts gore guy, known as kind of indie darling auteur filmmaker, Down by Law, Dead Man, Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai, Broken Flowers, Coffee and Cigarettes. He's made a ton of great, sometimes very funny indie film. I don't even know what you'd describe them as. But his movie before the last one, he did Only Lovers Left Alive with his kind of one of his constant collaborators, Tilda Swinton, and it was a vampire movie. And I remember when that came out, I was intrigued, but I was also kind of like, well, there's been so many vampire movies, and it came out around the same time that Let the Right One In had come over to America, and that movie's so good, and it does so much to the vampire mythos, and such a fresh breath of fresh air. I kind of went into Only Lovers Left Alive expecting, okay, it's going to be an interesting curio in Jarmusch's filmography. He's going to dabble with horror. He's going to come into the horror scene for a little while. It is a movie that I really, really enjoyed. It's a movie that kind of blew away my expectations. Great performances, Tilda Swinton, Tom Hiddleston. Fun little twists on the vampire mythos, and just like cool images and a neat pairing with the music scenes and the vampire scenes, and a lot of stuff that I feel like vampire movies hadn't really said before, because someone with a little bit fresh eyes coming to it. Flash forward to just last night, going to a screening of The Dead Don't Die, and almost the exact same thing happened, where I don't usually watch trailers for movies, but I watched a trailer for this one, kind of just because I was like, zombie comedy, like, it's not super interesting to me. Even though I love Shaun of the Dead, I really like Zombieland. There are like definitely movies within this genre, and even pretty recently, that I've really enjoyed. And I am a very, very big zombie fan. I think Romero's Dead Trilogy, I think those are just some of the best movies ever made. Dawn of the Dead is in contention for my favorite film ever. So I love zombies. It's not that I don't like the subgenre. I just, for whatever reason, just tired of it. And I kind of went into this screening. I'd heard word of mouth seem kind of mixed to me. I try not to let that influence. And I try not to let my expectations influence movies, but it's, we're human, it happens. And maybe 15 minutes in, there's a joke in The Dead Don't Die that kind of floored me, that made me laugh. And the theater was not having any of it. There's people were like talking and on their phones and just like not giving this movie the time of day. There was like a couple like heckles. Like people were not enjoying it. I don't know what the mood was in the theater. The volume was like too low and stuff like that. It was just a weird way to like start the movie. But people started vibing with it eventually. But it's a movie that completely, like Only Lovers Left Alive, he's gonna keep doing this, I guess. If he just keeps, he'll do, I guess, one straight film, one horror film. If he keeps alternating them, if the pattern holds, and I think he should, because this movie cracked me up. Very briefly, the story is almost perfunctory. It opens with Adam Driver and Bill Murray as an old cop and a young cop, kind of going about their business, their kind of routine day to day in a small town USA. It's called Centerville. It is deliberately could be anywhere, even though they filmed it upstate New York, and I really like the look of the movie. There's some real like artsiness to the lack of art, or the kind of just straightforwardness of the cinematography. They're going about their day to day, and their day seems to be getting longer because it's supposed to be sundown, their watches have stopped, but the sun is keeping shining. And we find out through snippets of radio and TV broadcasts that the Earth has been pushed off its axis somehow, which is messing with all the wildlife and messing with all the electronics. Just daylight, very kind of tongue-in-cheek. The movie's kind of blaming Arctic fracking, even though like every time you hear Arctic fracking on the TV or on the radio, they're just like, authorities say it has nothing to do with Arctic fracking. So it's played like a bit, and it's played like the weirdest kind of repetitious deadpan bit, which is a lot of the jokes in this movie. It is a very deadpan movie. It is very almost non-humor to its humor, which will not work for many, many people watching this video. I know when I talk about newer films, I get more views and I get more people kind of coming in who aren't normally hanging out on the channel, just to be like, this movie sucked and you suck, like, what's wrong with you? And if you are the kind of person that does like drive-by comments like that, more power to you. You're out there doing the Lord's work, but you will not enjoy this film. This is not the movie for you. It is playing on a weirdly sedate, weirdly deadpan, weirdly fake cerebral level. It's an hour 45 minutes, and it feels somewhat substantial because it does feel like feels both episodic and long, because it has this huge sprawling cast. It has Chloe Sevigny, Selena Gomez, Carol Kane, Iggy Pop, RZA. It just, like, the list keeps on going. It has Rosie Perez playing a newscaster named Posey Larez. It's that kind of movie, and it's got these incredible stars being both very silly and very broad, and very, in some cases against type, in some cases so to type that they're almost playing themselves, and the movie jokes about that. It's got such an interesting cadence to it, and such an interesting presentation of material that the movie is very aware that you've seen before. The movie is almost kind of bending backwards on itself to tell you that we've seen a lot of zombie films before. We've made a lot of zombie films before. The zombie film at this point is as codified a subgenre or genre as like the Western. And you've seen all these tropes before, but you haven't seen them with these actors, and you haven't seen them with this director. And even the point that, or the allegorical implications of zombies, the representation of the total end game of a mindless consumer society, that they are kind of what we have forced ourselves to become. Even those conclusions, which the film presents in a kind of voiceover by Tom Waits, even those conclusions are at a certain point rote. It's like, of course that's what zombies represent. Zombies have represented that since since Romero first picked up a camera. Like that's kind of the idea. Since they've represented that 68, they've represented that for 40 years. So there's something to even the quote unquote like moral or message or delivery of that message that the film makes, that you gotta wonder if Jarmusch is even like, he's kind of winking at the viewers, kind of like, I understand that you've seen it all, but you haven't seen it this way, or if you have seen it this way, you haven't seen it as detached as this, you haven't seen it as funny as this, because again, there are jokes in here that are very, very, very funny, I think. And I'm a hard sell for this kind of stuff. Thematics of it are somewhat downbeat and somewhat pessimistic and somewhat like, look at the state of the world, look what we've done. And it's not just like an eco message thing. It's not just like fracking. That's almost a joke. But it's literally just like, look at where the culture is, look at where we are as people and how we treat each other. And this maybe is the end we deserve, or maybe this is the end we're headed towards, or maybe this is the eventuality of everything. But again, I don't even know what the movie means. I don't even know what kind of point it's trying to make, because I don't 100% trust the textual explanation that the movie gives for itself. I don't trust it because the humor's too weird, and because the Jarmuschian touches of people hanging out and drinking coffee even when they're dead is something that's such a funny singular image, and it's a interesting remixing of something that even the movie itself is like, yeah, you've seen this a million times before. Your mileage will definitely vary, and I do want to hear about those of you who didn't like it or didn't vibe with the movie. And one last thing I'll say about it, really does take its zombie stuff not exactly seriously, but it gives you the goods. Like the visual effects are pretty cool. The zombie makeup is pretty cool. It's not half-assed. It's not cheesy. The gore gags, the zombies kind of like they have like dust in them, even though like they're like even the recently dead, like when they're killed or they chop their heads off. It's not a shoot them in the head zombie movie. It's a cut off their head zombie movie. But it leads to some really great visuals where we're slicing off heads with different implements, and then like these plumes of smoke are coming out. Which the plumes of smoke, I'll be quite honest, digital smoke, I much prefer digital smoke and dust. I much prefer to digital blood. Just looks cooler. So those are my rambling thoughts about The Dead Don't Die, a movie that is sure to divide even the most ardent of zombie fans. Before we talk about this week's book recommendation, I do want to make a very brief announcement, and if you follow me on Twitter or if you follow me on Instagram, you might have already seen this. There was an announce yesterday in Publishers Marketplace that I've sold a book called Clown in the Cornfield to HarperCollins. It's going to be out through Harper Teen in summer 2020. And I'm overwhelmed at the response, and people have been very, very kind. And this is a major, major book deal for me. I've been publishing horror fiction since Tribesman, and at this point, that's almost a decade ago. I've been trying to go strong ever since, trying to be more and more proud of my output with each subsequent book. It's just such a huge deal for me to be putting this book out with a publisher like HarperCollins. We've already got Temple Hill Entertainment attached to handle the film and TV development rights. And they've done a ton of very high-profile YA novel adaptations. You look them up, you know their stuff. So it's just really, really humbling and really, really cool. So thank you everyone who's been nice, and thank you everyone who's supported my work in the past, who's bought my books. Those aren't going anywhere. You can still buy them because summer 2020 is a little while away, so maybe read those books. But I'm really, really proud of this. I can't say much about Clown in the Cornfield. I can't say much about what it's about, what it is, because I don't want to kind of front load and tell you like all its secrets a year in advance. But I will say it is a slasher. It is my favorite genre to consume, to write, to read, to watch. And I'm just so happy that I get to do something that I haven't gotten to do before. And I think it's really, really good. I think you're really going to like it. All right, that was the announcement, and now let's talk about a book. And let's talk about a book that is huge and not really a coffee table book, because there is a ton of words in here. It is almost an encyclopedia level, but it does have just beautiful, beautiful artwork in it. This is Blood on Black Wax by Aaron Lupton and Jeff Szpirglas. Sorry guys if I messed up your names. You have hard names. As Adam Cesare, Caesar, Kaiser, I understand. This is a kind of history or nonfiction book about horror soundtracks on vinyl. And if that sounds specific, it kind of is. But it is a subject that I didn't know a whole bunch about. I didn't know a whole lot about. I kind of know like Death Waltz Records, and I know that there's this subsection of horror fans that collects LPs or records and vinyl and collects soundtracks. It's just something I never really knew about. I like film soundtracks. I like film scores. It was always just seemed like one more thing for me to collect that I don't need to, look at what I've done here. Like, I don't need more of this. But Blood on Black Wax is kind of the perfect book for me because it lets me live vicariously, and it lets me check out, some of these incredible both original and reissue releases. So it takes the kind of form of a little bit of an encyclopedia. There's a nice glossary in the back. But it starts with an introduction by Mick Garris, and then the writers talk about each kind of subgenre of horror. They're kind of they mix them up with subgenre. They do a nice image of the vinyl, and then they write it up. And there's a couple of like interviews thrown in too. There's all this. You get like a real sense of the history of this scene, or you get a real sense of like how ooh, look, Italian horror. You get a real sense of how deep you really could get in if you started collecting these things. But it's this beautiful, beautiful book. It's put out, Rue Morgue Presents, and it's, I guess, 1984 is the publisher. But it's unbelievable. Shout out to Dark Depths Games and Vinyl Altar. The guys over there did me a deal on the Record Store Day version, which is the book's actually signed, and it came with this really cool prom night 7-inch with art by Ghoulish Gary Pullen. If you know him from Rue Morgue and other places. It's just a neat little thing, and it's like, wow, now my collection has started, even though I didn't want it to start. But it's a really, really neat packet. If you have even a passing interest in scores and soundtracks and vinyl collecting, very much recommend Blood on Black Wax. All right, that's it. I'm Adam Caesar. Find me on Twitter. Find me on Amazon. Go buy books. Go watch other videos. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.